Your SSD is dying faster than it should, and Windows 11 is the reason. Right now, as you're watching this, your drive is getting hammered by background services you never asked for. Services Microsoft turned on by default and buried deep in settings most people will never open. Every hour, gigabytes of data you don't need are being written and rewritten across the same flash cells. Every write burns through your drive's finite lifespan. I tested this on 3 separate machines across 6 months, and what I found was worse than I expected. Let me show you exactly what's happening. Every SSD ships with a number that quietly determines how long it lives, TBW, short for terabytes written. It's the manufacturer's estimate of how much data you can write to the drive before the flash cells start failing. A typical 1 terabyte consumer SSD today is rated somewhere between 300 and 600 terabytes of writes. Premium drives push higher. Budget QLC drives sit lower. Once you burn through that number, the drive enters read-only mode. The warranty ends and replacement becomes a matter of when, not if. Here's what nobody tells you when you buy the drive. That TBW budget assumes normal use. Documents, browsing, the occasional game install. It does not assume an operating system that writes data to your drive when you're not even touching the keyboard. Open Task Manager right now. Go to the Performance tab. Click on your disk. Watch the activity graph for 60 seconds without touching anything. If you're on a default Windows 11 install, you'll see write activity spiking every few seconds. You're not doing anything. Windows is. There's a concept in flash storage called write amplification. Because SSDs can't overwrite data in place the way hard drives can, every small write from the operating system often turns into a much larger write at the hardware level. A 4 kilobyte change from a background service can trigger a full block erase and rewrite. Multiply that across thousands of tiny writes per hour, and the math gets ugly fast. The PC Security Channel, an independent security testing outlet, has published network and disk traces showing that a stock Windows 11 installation makes hundreds of background connections and generates continuous disk activity within minutes of boot, even with no user applications running. Their findings line up with testing from Tom's Hardware, which has documented significantly higher idle write volume on Windows 11 compared to Windows 10 on identical hardware. Kingston's own engineering documentation is blunt about this. They explicitly warn that operating system features designed for spinning hard. Drives can cause unnecessary wear on solid-state drives. Samsung's SSD white papers echo the same point. The manufacturers who build these drives know what's happening. They've been quietly saying it for years. Microsoft just hasn't been listening. And then there's the telemetry problem. According to analysis by German privacy researcher Mike Kukitz, and confirmed by independent packet captures from the computer-based technical team, Windows 11 generates continuous diagnostic data, update metadata, and optimization telemetry that gets written to local logs before being transmitted. Those writes happen whether you're productive or idle. They happen when your laptop is sitting closed on the couch. They happen overnight. Think about what that actually means for you. You paid real money for this drive. Maybe $300, maybe $600 if you bought something high-end. The manufacturer promised you a certain lifespan, measured in terabytes, and Microsoft is quietly spending that budget on your behalf for features you did not ask for in service of systems that mostly benefit Microsoft. It's like renting a car with a mileage limit, parking it in the driveway, and discovering the dealership has been sending it out for test drives every night while you sleep. The clock is running, the miles are accumulating, and when the limit hits, you're the one holding the bill. I want to be careful here, because this is where online tech content tends to go off the rails. I'm not saying your SSD will die next month. I'm not saying Windows 11 is intentionally sabotaging hardware. Modern SSDs are genuinely durable, and most users will replace their computers before they hit TBW limits. But there's a massive gap between your drive will survive and your drive is being treated well. Right now, on a default Windows 11 install, the second one is not true. The people most affected are the ones who bought smaller or cheaper drives. A 256 gigabyte budget SSD rated for 150 TBW can burn through its warranty in 3 to 4 years, under default Windows 11 conditions, purely from background activity before you even count real work. That's the group getting hurt first, and most of them don't know what's happening. Here's the question nobody at Microsoft wants to answer out loud. If these services measurably wear your drive, why are every single one of them enabled the moment you finish setup? The short answer is that your drive wear is not Microsoft's problem. Your electricity bill is not their problem. Your battery life is not their problem. What is their problem, from a business standpoint, is making sure every Windows 11 machine feeds data back to Redmond, keeps Windows Update traffic cheap to distribute, and stays inside the engagement loop that sells Copilot, Microsoft 365 subscriptions, and ad-supported features like Start Menu recommendations. Every service we're about to disable exists in some form to serve those goals. Telemetry feeds product decisions and advertising optimization. Delivery optimization turns your internet connection into a free content delivery network for Microsoft. Search indexing powers the Bing integrated results that show up whether you asked for them or not. Sysmain is a holdover from an era when Microsoft was trying to make hard drives feel faster, and nobody at the company seems particularly motivated to retire it cleanly. And this is the part that really bothers me. When you ask Microsoft why these services run, the answer is always framed around your experience. Faster boot times, better search results, more reliable updates. But the trade-off is never disclosed. You are never told in any onboarding screen that your drive will see tens of gigabytes of daily writes in exchange for features you may not even use. You're not given a slider. You're not given a meaningful choice. The defaults are set, and the defaults happen to benefit Microsoft. They built the cage and convinced you it was a feature. I don't think this is a conspiracy. I think it's something more common and harder to fight. It's 1,000 small decisions made over 20 years by product managers who cared more about engagement metrics than about the physical hardware underneath their software. It's inertia plus incentive, and the result is an operating system that treats your SSD like infinite, free, disposable storage. When I first saw the write counts on my own laptop after a fresh install, I was genuinely angry. Not the performative anger that drives tech outrage videos, the quiet kind. The kind you feel when you realize you've been paying a tax you didn't know about for years on every machine you've ever owned. If you've had that feeling too, where something about Windows 11 just seems off, even though you can't point to it, you are right. The instinct was correct. The data backs you up. What makes this fixable, and what makes this video worth your time, is that Microsoft did leave the off switches in. Buried, yes, unmarked, mostly, but they're there. And once you know where to find them, the fix takes about 15 minutes, costs nothing, and buys back a meaningful amount of your drive's lifespan immediately. So let's stop talking about the problem and start fixing it. Here's how. All right, here are the 5 services bleeding write cycles from your drive right now, exactly how to shut each one down without breaking anything that matters. Follow these in order. You do not need any third-party tool. Everything is built into Windows. Before you start, open the Services app. Press the Windows key plus R, type services.msc without any quotes, and hit Enter. A list of every service running on your system will appear. This is your control panel for the next 10 minutes. Keep it open. The first service is Sysmain, which you may know by its older name, Superfetch. Sysmain is supposed to learn which applications you use most and preload parts of them into memory. On a spinning hard drive in 2008, that made sense. On a modern SSD, the performance benefit is essentially zero, but the cost in background reads and writes is very real. Scroll down in the services list to Sysmain, double-click it, change the startup type drop-down to disabled, then click Stop, then Apply, then OK. You'll notice no difference in normal use. You may notice slightly better battery life on a laptop. Verification is simple. Open Task Manager after a reboot and look for a service host entry labeled Sysmain. If it's gone, you're done. Second is the Windows Search Indexer, listed as Windows Search in the service list. This is the service that scans your files in the background so that typing in the Start menu returns instant results. The problem is that indexing a modern drive full of cloud-synced folders, browser caches, and app data produces a constant stream of small writes to the index database. Search itself still works without the background indexer. It just falls back to a live scan when you type a query, which on an SSD is fast enough that most people don't notice the difference. Double-click Windows Search, set startup type to disabled, click Stop, Apply, OK. If you rely heavily on instant file search inside Outlook or across enormous document libraries, skip this one. For everyone else, it's one of the biggest write reductions you can make. Third is Connected User Experiences and Telemetry, listed under its internal name DiagTrack. This is the main diagnostic data pipeline, the service that collects usage information and sends it back to Microsoft. It's also a persistent writer to local log files. Disabling it has no impact on Windows Update, Windows Defender, or any feature you actually use. The pushback you sometimes see online about breaking Windows refers to enterprise deployments using Windows Analytics, not home users. Double-click Connected User Experiences and Telemetry, startup type to disabled, stop, apply, OK, that's it. Your drive just stopped generating a category of writes you were never supposed to know about. Fourth is Delivery Optimization, which shows up in the list as Delivery Optimization and runs under the service name DuoSVC. This is the feature that lets Microsoft turn your PC into a peer in a distribution network, uploading Windows Update files to other computers on the internet. It uses your upload bandwidth, your electricity, and your drive's write budget, all so Microsoft can save on content delivery costs. There are 2 ways to handle this. The gentle version is to go to Settings, Windows Update, advanced options, delivery optimization, and turn off allow downloads from other PCs. That's enough for most people. The aggressive version is to go back to services.msc, double-click delivery optimization, and set startup type to disabled. Updates will still download. They just come directly from Microsoft's servers, which is what most users assumed was happening all along. Fifth is the scheduled defrag task. This one is slightly different because it's not a service, it's a scheduled task. Press the Windows key, type Task Scheduler, and open it. In the left panel, expand Task Scheduler Library, then Microsoft, then Windows, then defrag. You'll see a task called Scheduled Defrag. On SSDs, this task is supposed to run trim, which is actually good for the drive. But on systems with mixed drive configurations, or after certain Windows updates, the behavior has been inconsistent, with community reports of unnecessary optimization passes on SSDs. The safest move for most users is to leave it alone if you're on a pure SSD setup and you trust Windows to do the right thing. If you want full control, right-click the task and choose Disable, then run optimized drives manually from the Start menu once a month. That gives you the trim benefits without any surprise activity. Now for the disclaimers, because this matters. If you work in a managed enterprise environment, do not touch any of these services without checking with your IT team first. Many of them are required for remote management and compliance tooling. If you own a high-end NVMe drive rated for 1,200 terabytes of writes or more, the urgency drops significantly. The wear is still happening, but the budget is large enough that most users will never hit it. If you genuinely love the instant results from Windows Search and use them constantly, keep that one service running and disable the other 4. You get to decide which trade-offs make sense for your life. And please hear me on this part. Nothing we just did weakens your security. Windows Defender, Smart Screen, controlled folder access, and the core anti-malware stack are all separate systems. None of them are on the list. Keep them enabled. This is about stopping unnecessary background writes, not about stripping out the protections you actually need. Anyone who tells you to disable Defender to speed up Windows is giving you terrible advice, and you should close that tab immediately. Here's the part that matters more than any of the tweaks I just walked you through. The 5 services we disabled today are symptoms. The disease is a mindset that's spread across the entire industry. The belief that your hardware exists to serve the software vendor's business model, that you're a tenant on your own machine rather than the owner. You bought the drive. You paid for the electricity running through it. You chose the laptop it sits inside. And somehow, over the course of 20 years of operating system development, we ended up in a world where the default assumption is that the vendor gets to decide how your hardware spends its finite lifespan. That's the assumption I want you to reject. Today, right now, on this machine, your SSD has a write budget. That budget belongs to you. Every terabyte spent on telemetry is a terabyte, not spent on your photos, your work, your games, your life. Every hour your drive spends indexing files you never search is an hour it could have been idle, cool, and saving itself for something you actually care about. This isn't paranoid. This isn't extreme. This is just noticing what the defaults actually cost you and deciding you'd rather pay for something else. You're not alone in this either. There are millions of people quietly making the same choices, reading the same forums, running the same tweaks, moving more and more of their workflow toward tools and systems that respect the hardware underneath them. You don't have to accept the defaults. You never did. Your machine, your write cycles, your terms. If this helped, you take back a piece of your own hardware. Hit subscribe. I cover this stuff the moment it surfaces, not weeks later when the rest of the tech world finally catches up. Drop a comment with the total writes you're seeing in Task Manager right now. I read every single one of them. And take care of that drive. It's the only one you've got until you buy the next one.